All right. Thanks, Jacob. Hi, yeah. So I'm Craig Hansen, and I'm a mentor in the UI program at CareerFoundry. I've done that for almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in January. And they asked me to come up with a demo to help students kind of understand XD. The beautiful thing about XD or Sketch or Figma is that they're actually all very similar. So what I'm about to show you, with a few exceptions of tool names or placements in the interface, they're actually all about UI tools in general, and then specifically, of course, XD. So with that, and we're going to be designing kind of from scratch all the way to a finished sort of a photo sharing, scrolling, similar to an Instagram-like interface. And like Jakob said, you can either just watch and maybe follow along later, or you can follow along as we're doing it. We're going to build in a couple of pauses in between artboards so that you will have some time to do that, because I obviously go a little faster than someone who's never done it. So with that, let's zoom in and have a nice meta version of the interface. So essentially what we've got is the toolbar over here on the left. And then this panel can change. So in here it's called layers. Whenever something's blue, that's what you're in. So there's these two kind of stacks, that's called layers. And so that's what we're seeing here are the layers that make up the different parts of this file, and that'll make more sense in a second. This is your assets panel. Not much is in that for this one. I did save some colors from my design. It's where you want to put things such as colors or fonts, etc. And then this one that looks like a little plug or a little Lego, those are plugins. And I will show you how to search for and download a couple of useful plugins. They're really beneficial time savers when you're working, and I hope to make that apparent here in a few minutes. Let's see. Then you've got the inspector over here, and the inspector changes. So if I'm clicked on a gray rectangle, it tells me it's gray, that it doesn't have a border, that it's 100%. Now it's 16%. It changes to tell me information about the thing that I'm touching. If I were on typography, it would tell me that it's Helvetica, and then it's 18 point, and that it's a regular weight, and that it's still that gray color. If it were a different color, it would tell me that. So the inspector is really nice because it actively changes depending on what it is that you've selected. The artboards are these, and to get one, you just go over here. And we're going to go over how to do this. And you'll see that just by selecting that tool, you'll see it's blue. Just by selecting that tool, I get a huge library of possible new devices, etc. I can also just draw my own custom one. That's called an artboard. And then finally, I'll zoom back in here real quick, the area around an artboard. So I'll zoom way, 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 way far out. All this gray area is called the pasteboard. And XD gives you a pretty large pasteboard. If that's the normal size of an iPhone 12, you can see that I could build about a 400 screen app before I would run out of space on my pasteboard. All right, so let's zoom in a little bit closer. So these tools here, I went into a little bit more of a detail. And there are a ton of keyboard shortcuts for just about everything in an Adobe program, and XD is no different. These are the really commonly used ones, probably the ones you'll want to learn right away. So your direct selection tool is this bluish colored arrow. And by direct selection tool, it means, just like you're seeing on my screen, there's a black cursor. And if I want to select something, I just do so. So it's a direct selection tool. And to get there quickly, I just click the letter V. So if I were in a different tool, yes.
Craig, sorry to disturb you, but we seem to be having this same lag problem with your screen. I wonder if you can unshare your screen and then share it again.
Of course.
That might help. I switched to your camera off temporarily.
Okay.
So let's see, maybe that will help.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know. Screen 1. Are you now seeing the... Yeah, oh yeah, now I see. You know what, I'll just have to do a little better job of looking from time to time to my other monitor, because it does give me a preview of what you're seeing. So if it gets behind again, I'll try and catch that.
All good. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. So again, this blue arrow, it's not blue right now because I'm not in it. If I wanted to be in it, I would just click the letter V on my keyboard and it turns blue. Or of course, you can just manually go over and do so. The rectangle looks like a square. It's because if you click the letter R and hold Shift, you'll get a square. And if you don't hold Shift, you can make any kind of rectangle. The ellipse tool. Again, you can always just come over and click it, but it's nice to get to know these. So to make a circle or an oval or an ellipse in this case, for the mnemonic, you just click the letter E, it'll turn blue. And again, if I don't hold Shift, I can make any kind of oval. If I hold Shift, it will proportionally scale and be a perfect circle. No amount of Google searching provided me with what the shortcut is for a triangle. So you would just go over and click triangle and make a triangle. And if you don't hit Shift, you'll get all kinds of interesting shapes, triangles. And this, you'll get an equilateral triangle. It's been a while since I've been in math. I'm pretty sure that's called. L is for line, nice and easy. You can draw lines at any angle. Or holding Shift, you get a 90, a 45, or a 90. It's very useful for separating information on screens. The line tool is really nice and can be adjusted to be any color, any stroke weight, etc. The pen tool is P for pen. Again, they try to help us with the mnemonics. If you just click and keep moving, you can draw. If you click and hold and then drag, you get what's called Bezier curves. And that will allow you to make kind of curved lines, and they're fully editable. You can actually go in and change them even as you're drawing. The pen tool is really cool, but it's really difficult to be an expert at. I would suggest for the time being, almost anything can be drawn using shapes, and I would suggest that you do that for the most part. But play around with the pen tool. If you're coming from a design background and maybe you're comfortable in things like Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, pen tool might make a little more sense, but it's a fairly confusing tool, I think, partially because it is so dynamic. All right, T for type. You just want to click and you just start typing. And then you can select all. It's very similar to any tool you've ever used before. You can change the font over here to anything that you might like, change the color, etc. All over there in that inspector, as I said. A for artboard. So again, if I click that, this becomes blue over here. I get that list of possible devices I might want to. And then Z for zoom, which is nice, but honestly, a far better than constantly switching in and out of your tools would be Command and Space or Control and Space if you're on a Windows. What's nice about that is, let's just say I was drawing circles, and so I'm in the circle tool, but then I really want to get in close and I want to keep drawing circles. See how I didn't have to go back and forth between circle and zoom, circle and zoom? I could just stay in circle by simply holding Command and Space bar and zooming, and then Command and minus to zoom out. I didn't put that on there, but because it's not super important. In fact, Sketch and Figma don't do that. So in some ways, learning just to do it with Z might be best for compatibility with other programs. Okay, so let's zoom out. And one last thing before we get started on some actual design is, technically, you should never just start from a blank canvas and just get going. You should probably do some pencil sketches. Obviously, there's going to be client briefs and any number of things that would go into that. So I'm just putting this here to show that really before you draw and design anything in in XD, you should probably have a basic layout, some kind of user flow or sketch of where you think you might take this. And it can be as rudimentary as this. And we'll cover that in depth in the curriculum of the actual course. So don't worry about that. You will definitely understand how to draw and concept things from pencil and paper onwards. Now, Jakob, should I allow for any questions right now? How would you like me to do that?
Yeah, we actually have one question, actually one tip. So apparently, shortcut for the triangle is Y. Can you
I
try
just saw
this?
that. That's awesome. Thank you. Well, let's try it. I don't know. I seriously Googled and Googled. Look at that. Yes.
That's amazing. Okay.
You rock. All
So
right, we're already getting somewhere.
mystery
excellent.
solved. So this will definitely need to be added for the next iteration of this event. And then Hannah's
Absolutely.
asking, for the pen tool, can we plus add the point or use click on the shape? So
Say that
can we
again.
maybe experiment? So with the pen tool, can you use the plus key to add a point on the line that you create with a pen tool?
Let's see. Plus. I think I have to stop. So I've drawn a shape. Now plus. Plus does not do it. You can actually... No, that's a different line. Oh, good question. Let's see here. You double click it and then just click again. So you don't have to... You don't actually have to be in any tool except the direct selection. If you double click any kind of shape or line and then click on that line, it will create a new point. And then that point, those points are all editable, have all the Bezier curves. So it's actually done with the direct selection after you double click on a shape or on a line.
Great. I think,
Cool.
I think that answered Hannah's question. And there's a question about Adobe XD, the free version and the paid version. I think that the free version you're downloading should be sufficient because it's a free trial, and the file that we provided you with should work. It was created in the latest version of Adobe XD. So if you head to adobe.com, download the Adobe XD from there, it should work. You'll obviously need to create an account with Adobe, but it usually takes a few minutes.
So and to the best of my knowledge, there's no functionality differences between the free and the paid. I think you can only have one live file at any given time, something like that. So yeah, it's a full version, in other words, the free one.
Cool. I think that's it for now. So I'll set up.
Okay, great. All right. So what we've got here essentially is circles and rectangles and some text. And I want to kind of hopefully demystify some of the UI design process and show how circles and rectangles and type can create something that looks very, very much recognizable, something we're very familiar with and feels very well designed. So first thing we want to do is click A for Artboard. And this is an iPhone 12 Pro Max. So let's just go ahead and click that one. It's going to draw one. I think for ease, I'm going to move this over here. In order to do that, I clicked V for the direct selection tool. So everything kind of happens with that direct selection tool. You move things, etc. We're not going to worry about exact sizes and shapes here, but essentially what we've got here is a little triangular back button, 3 circles, kind of a little kebab menu, a couple more circles. Let's go down here and start kind of drawing those things. So the first one would be the back button. So let's draw something about like that. And XD always defaults to a white fill and a dark gray border. It's not my favorite thing about this program, but it's what it does. So turn the border off, collect fill, make it whatever color you want. I'll just kind of stay in this mid-gray area. And then you just want to click V for direct selection tool. I'm going to zoom in way closer so you can see. So I've drawn a little rectangle, and then I can either Command C, Command V, and it will copy it perfectly into place. I can also just hold Option or Alt, depending on if you're a Mac or a Windows. And if you just drag, it'll go away. If you drag and shift, it'll even stay proportionally. So there's two ways to make a copy. And then with XD, if you get real close to a corner, you'll see how it turns into two little arrows. That's to rotate. And if I hold shift, it'll rotate at about, it looks like about 20, 25 degree increments, because I want it perfect. And so then I can connect those two and then do it again. I hover real close to the edge. It gives me that rotation, and I can rotate it. And I could group them. I could do something called add over here. It actually just turns it into one shape. That's probably the best thing to do. You want to keep your files clean and simple. And so there we go. We've got a little back shape. Now we want to make those three little kebab menu. So we can either hit E for ellipse or just go over and click on the ellipse tool. And you want them to be centered with your back button, just simply on the other side of the screen. So XD is really nice. It actually shows me when I'm centered or not centered. And if I hold Option or Alt and Shift, it will actually expand out from that center point. So let's make it about that big. And again, like I said, it always defaults to a white fill and a dark border. Let's just turn that off. And in the fill, you can click this eyedropper, and you can just go like that. So now you have the exact same color. When you're doing wireframing, it's nice just to have everything kind of a simple monochromatic, then your eye doesn't get focused on color and things too soon. And then, as I said again, you can go Command or Control C, Command and Control V. It'll just make a copy perfectly in place. Or you can simply click and Option Alt and drag. And XD is great. It tells me when they're evenly separate, spaced. So these are all 5 pixels apart. There's no really right or wrong on this, so that feels pretty good to me. Let's zoom out a little bit. Maybe it should go up a little bit on the artboard. Maybe that back button's a little big, but for right now, I think we're totally fine. Yeah, it's definitely bigger than the one I did before, but I think that's okay. We're getting a good feel for how this all works. All right, then we're gonna have like a little avatar, your user profile would be. So turn off that border, click the eyedropper, make it gray, and move that up a little bit. Then we want kind of the photo area. So R for rectangle, or just go over there. Oops. R for rectangle. Oh, it's being weird. Hold on just a second. My XD is freaking out on me, so just a minute. I don't know what it's doing. It's frozen. I'm going to quit XD. I'll be right back.
How about
Yes.
we switch off Spotify and Microsoft Notes application?
Yeah, sure.
That just sometimes helps with my XD.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's try that, and then let's refresh as well.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, my computer's up unhappy altogether. Everything's suddenly being a little weird. Well, that's very unusual. I can't do anything. I can't even force quit. It's a brand new computer. I'm actually surprised by this.
All good. Craig,
welcome to UI design.
Exactly. How about you restart your computer,
yes,
and I'll entertain the audience.
That sounds good.
For the next 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'll be back shortly.
Yeah. Apologies
Yes.
about that. I'll just, Craig will be back shortly. This is the first time we are running this event, so please be patient with us. Actually, after the event, we'll be sending a survey. So it would be amazing if you could fill it out, let us know what you thought. But once again, yeah, this is the first time we'll be running this event. So I'm gonna play this little relaxing music in the background and wait for Craig to get back to us. Enjoy. Okay, Craig is back. Let's see. But we can't hear you now. We heard you a second ago, but now we can't hear you. But we heard you a second ago. Nothing. Yeah, not sure what's going on. How about we literally just heard you? So something you plugged in your headphones. Can you go to settings? I think I know what that might be. If you go to your system preferences on your Mac. Exactly. And if you go to input instead of output, let's try that. Refresh your browser again, and then hopefully that will help. Yes, of course, it's possible. You can share your LinkedIns, for example. I see a lot of participants doing that during our live events. Yeah, you can do that. And we can hear you. Yes. Okay. I'm going to disappear once again. Apologies, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. And yeah, hopefully it will work now. I'm disappearing as well.
So if you still, I can select away from something with the direct selection tool and just come across certain shapes, and it will select those and allow me to move them or alter them. Click, and you can select more than one thing. So that's what I'm doing here when I want to make these two just a little smaller, just so I see them as something different. And so if we zoom out, other than the fact that my gray is a little different and everything's a slightly different dimension, I've now built that first screen. So I don't know if we want to take a break and you want to try that yourself. Jakob, I'll let you decide how that goes. I know I just took 5 minutes, so maybe everybody's already caught up. Is everybody there?
Sorry, Craig, I think I missed it. What was that?
I was just asking, so I took 5 minutes there. Is everyone caught up? Would you like a few minutes to try and draw these elements on this screen if you haven't already? Or would you like me to move to the next one?
Let's move on. I think I'm seeing a couple of comments that people caught up. Yeah.
Okay, great. Good, thank you. All right, so now I could go A for artboard, and I could draw another one, and it annoyingly keeps wanting to put it over there, and oops, and I could move it over here. But that's not a great way to make sure that everything stays exactly where you've designed it. And starting from here, we're essentially trying to get here without much shifting or any shifting really in the placement of things. So there are two ways that you could do this. One, you could select it, and you could Command Control C, Command Control V, and it'll just plop one over. That's a super, super easy way. I would probably just recommend that way. The other way is just like everything else. If you select the name, Option or Alt, and drag, you get another one. So that way you're not redesigning everything, and you're not possibly copying something into the wrong part of an artboard. You just get an exact replica. And so now we're going to add some typography. And we can start out by just clicking T for type. And I just named this app Latergram. And mine's already set in the color and all that. That's not ideal. Let me get that to be just a default like Helvetica. And let's make it the same color of gray. Because technically that's really the way that you would be designing, especially on yours at first. So we'll just do something like that. And then again, T for type. And I don't know, I think I named that Lady Janice Smith. And then that's obviously much too large. So kind of just put it down here. And in your inspector, it says 55 point. Let's go down to, let's say 18 point. Oh, that's a little better. And then we'll go up for our reference. So that's looking good. I just need some lorem ipsum. So this is going to be your first example of where you could use a plugin. So technically, you could just create a little type box. And if you wanted, and we would want to make it left justified. Again, all of the type settings are very similar to Word or any kind of program you've used in the past to write papers, etc. And you could either write lorem ipsum, or you could just put nonsense with spaces. There's no reason that you couldn't do that. But a nice way to get a little bit more of a official looking text would be to actually just draw a rectangle. So you can click R for rectangle or go up there and just kind of make it look about like that. And then you go over to plugins, and I already have it downloaded. I'm going to show you how this works in a second. But you click on your lorem ipsum, and it says fill with placeholder text and end with a period. Sure, all their default settings are great. Now it's really small type, so I can then just say, I think it would look better if it were 18 point. And I think I'd like it to be the same gray. And I've just got a nice clean block of text that just looks more realistic. So how does one get a plugin? You go up here to plugins, and you say browse plugins. And it loads. No, I think because of that shutdown on my computer, it's going to take a second. Browse plugins. I'm not signed in. The best laid plans, right? Here they come. So it's part of Creative Cloud. And so this, even though I said manage plugins, for some reason it wants to take you to kind of your default everything page. I don't think that's super helpful on their part, but it's just the way it works. So I technically want plugins. And I don't even know where that is. So that's what I mean by that's, it's not ideal the way. Maybe you have to do this, plug-ins. Apps, plugins? I don't. I had this all set up. I'm so sorry. I'm not sure exactly how it defaults for everyone. In an ideal world, I'm gonna click this off this one more time. Plugins, browse plugins. Here we go. Okay, there we go. If you're already signed in, it won't do all that nonsense. I swear this was looking a lot better before, so I'm glad that's working now. And it's gonna give me plugins for all kinds of programs. I can go to manage plugins or all plugins, and I can just click XD, which is really all you want. And so they've got avatars for design mockups. They've got icons. We're actually going to use icons here in about 20 minutes. There's hundreds and hundreds of plugins, and you'll just want to kind of explore based on your needs what you might like to use. But they're really useful. They're all free. They install really easily. Here, I'll just install one. How about the user profile? So let's say git install, and it's installed. It's now available for me. If I go back to my plugins, shut that down, I have a user profile. So all your plugins show up over here in that layers panel, and they're really easily found. So again, you could type in whatever you want. If you had real copy, of course, with a client, when you're working with a client, they're going to have a copywriter, you're going to have real copy. But when you're at this very early stage, oftentimes you're going to need to just do some placeholder, and a lorem ipsum plugin like that is great. Okay, so now we can style this ever so slightly. I used Brush Script because I think it's a default font for all Macs. I'm not sure about on Windows, but to me, that little bit of cursive like font looks sort of like Instagram, and that was the point. So let's go back to our reference, and we're looking really good. We've got a very similar looking second wireframe there. Does anybody have any questions on that? Would you like a few more minutes to play around with that yourself?
Madison is asking, could you please re-explain how to change your artboard dimensions for different screen sizes?
Sure. Like after you've made one, like let's say I want this to now be a different iPhone.
Maybe let's go over it again. So from creating an artboard and then resizing it to maybe the project changed. Yeah.
Sure. That's a really good question. And it will be important. Let's say you're designing for both iOS and Windows. So the first thing I would do in that case is I'd make another one so you don't mess anything up. And it doesn't give you that really useful set of devices over here when you do that. It's already built. So this is actually a really good question. How does one do that? I think you actually want to go back to your artboards, and let's say you're working on a Samsung Galaxy. So we'll draw that one. Put that here. And then you would actually need to manually select. Remember how I said you could either select things, 1, Shift, 2, etc., or you can just kind of grab it all by selecting away from it and dragging over it. You can then just move this all in. And then you would just need to resize it so that it all fits. So in this instance, probably mean that for the first time ever, those buttons really are too big, but that's essentially how you would do it. So now you could be designing both an iOS version and an Android version, and you've got the artboards that are the same size. If you needed to just kind of randomly come up with a size, let's say for whatever reason, well, actually, this happens all the time. We don't just design for devices. Let's say that your developer says they want a 400 pixel wide by 800 pixel tall. You can just type it in there while selected on the artboard. Your inspector over here will be pertaining to that artboard. You can just type that in, hit return, and then again, you would have to resize things so that they make sense within that artboard. But yeah, so you can have absolutely any size artboard that you want. Does that answer your question?
That's awesome. Yeah, Madison says thank you, so I presume yes.
Good. All right. Good. That's a really good question, and you will design for different shapes and sizes. Of course, it's not all a single device.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So again, we're just gonna select the most recent wireframe we were working on, Command C, Command V. That way we at least start at the same place. And so what changes on this one? It's these little icons. We're gonna make a thumbs up and a speech bubble for commenting. Each one of these can be drawn. I'm gonna show you how to draw the speech bubble. But a thumbs up, I know it doesn't seem that dynamic, but it's actually somewhat difficult to draw. And so this is another place where you might, at least at the start, where you might want to use a plugin. So we're in the plugins menu and icons for design. So if I click that, this one's already been downloaded, in other words, and I just type in thumb. I get all these different possible thumbs. So designers design these things and make them available as these kits, and you can just kind of select ones that you like, dislike. So I'm going to click this one, and I don't actually know where it put it. It doesn't matter. I just hit, I just Command X to cut it, put it back in here. I can still make it that color if we want, so that we've still got some consistency with our wireframe. And now I've got a little thumbs up. And so this all depends on how you search. So I remember when I was actually trying to find one for the speech bubble, which I told you we're going to draw, and we will, but I typed in speech and nothing happened, and I typed in conversation and nothing. It ended up being bubble that worked. So this plugin is a little dependent on your ability to search. It's kind of like a Google search. You get as much as as good as your search is. But yeah, so let's real quick, let's draw one. Because you could draw it with the pen tool, but as I said before, pen tool is sometimes a little less than user-friendly. So you could just draw a rectangle, like so. And you see these little circles here? You can actually change, by dragging in and out, you can change the corner radiuses. And you can see that reflected up here as well. This is the corner radius area. I've made them 5. If I made them 10, it would pretty much almost turn into a circle. So you can do it either manually or type it in. Always that border fill situation. So let's just go ahead and make it the color that we're getting used to using. So we've got that. And then triangle, which was Y, is that right? Yes, I love that I learned something that's really, really fun, actually. And so now we've got a triangle. Hover near that triangle's corner, and I get that rotate, shift and rotate, so it's flipped. Maybe, I don't know, something like that. That seems nice. And then that seems a little sharp, so I'm just going to grab and pull in that corner radius as well. It's not the best conversation bubble I've ever seen in my whole entire life, but it'll work. Maybe we'll do 3. Those all feel more similar. And you can, again, just go up here. You're going to learn Boolean operations in Intro 1.4 in much more depth. It's a way of combining or cutting or removing pieces of shapes. This one is called add, and it just simply makes those 2 shapes into one. I can move this over. I can delete my circle. And there we go. You now have an icon that you didn't design and an icon that you did design. Again, there's really no reason, honestly, that creativity and UI design does not come from redrawing a magnifying glass for the 700th time or a thumb. I think where you should save your energies and your creativity is for, let's say, I don't know, you were doing a skiing app. Like that's where you might want to draw a really fun, like woolen cap with the puff on it, or some crisscross skis. I think that for the really basic kind of across the board, all apps use them. It's quite often a better choice to just use an icon that's already created and move on. All right, is that making sense?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I don't see any questions in the chat, so let's keep going. Yeah, thank you.
Good. All right. Well, now it seems like this is a massive step, right? But it's not, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to start making this look much more real. So we're just going to select that artboard that we just did, copy and paste, and whenever you're working, whether you're a student or whether you're working as a designer in an office with a client, the most common way to get imagery is going to be that a photographer has shared it with you, or that there's a library of stock photos. So before this class, I set up a folder that has this palm tree and this skateboarder. There are other ways to get photos using plugins, but I think that most often you're going to want to go do that research yourself on stock photography, or like I said, you'll have the photos submitted to you from the client. And so how do we get a photo in here? So you select on the rectangle that you want a photo in, and then you go to object. No, where is it? Sometimes you do these things so many times you forget. There we go. You import. And I just need to go find that. Photos. And the first one is a palm tree, so we'll click on that one. And it places it, and you can see that it's a huge photo, which is actually really important. You want much, much larger photos. So for the mobile version of this seems like overkill, right? But well, what if there was a desktop or a larger screen version of this? You don't want your imagery to be really small and ideal for say a phone because it will be pixelated on other screens. So you can just zoom out. I'm doing that by command or control minusing and plussing. You can just kind of go like that. And you can just grab one of the corners and scale. And just keep it on your artboard or it might disappear. It's a little confusing when it does. And it actually didn't put it into that rectangle. So we're going to go to our layers. This is the first time we're going to look at our layers. Do you see how the photo is up above everything happening on this screen? So I'm going to put it all the way at the bottom. Then I'm going to select this one. This is called Rectangle 7. I probably should have named it something like Image Placeholder 1. It comes in very, very handy as you're designing to be very clear with your naming. So I can now put that above our photo. I can select both. You can select them either here in the layers, or you can select them here. It doesn't matter. Either way, I can select them both that way. You'll see that they get blue highlighted, so you know you've got it. And then you go up to Object, and you say Mask with Shape. And now it's inside of the rectangle. And if I double click, I then have the ability to move it up and down based on the cropping that I want. And I think this is a good moment to actually select the icons and the text, and let's move them down a little bit because I don't really, that's okay. I don't really love that cropping. So then I can double click again, bring this down, and now we get a little bit more of the trunk, and I just think that looks nicer. Now, I don't have any photos of the avatars, the Janice, and we're going to have a guy here in just a minute. And so one way you would do that, of course, would be to have photos already selected and in that folder like I just showed you. Another is to use a plugin. And remember, I just downloaded a plugin called, close this up. Whoops, nope, don't want to do that. Sorry. Called User Profile. I can just click on that and I can hit done. Insert random photo. And it put a person in there. So I'll zoom in really, really close. It's a bit odd, but it'll work. Because all of this stuff, certainly if you're working on an app such as this, you have no idea what your users are going to put in there. So this will always be a placeholder. It really doesn't matter in that case. All right, so let's zoom back out and let's look at our reference. So we're getting close, but there's a little bit more going on here. We've got another user. And so a really cool function of XD, and I think that should be a little tighter there. Really cool function of XD is you can select everything that you want, and you can click this thing called a repeat grid. And you'll see that I immediately get these little green handles. If I go this direction, I get a repeat in the horizontal. And if I get a repeat, or if I go this way, I get a repeat in the vertical. So if I zoom out, you'll see this just does this forever. And each one of these is exactly the same layout, scale, and distance from each other, but they're still totally editable. So I can now double click this photo and I can say, import. No, I don't think I want to do that. I think I want to right click. Nope, I think it is import. So import, and I'll just grab our other photo. It was the skateboarding photo. It's probably going to make it huge again. Oof, what's it doing? I don't love that. I don't think I'm doing this right. Hold on just a second. I may have to figure this out at another time. I apologize. It does not want to be doing what I want it to do. But what we can do is change this person's name to Matthew Jones or something. And we can click this photo and we can say insert random photo. And it gave us a new photo. And I can hit insert random photo again. It'll just keep giving us, let's make sure it's at least some guy's face. So there we go. I don't know why it's not doing the same here. It really should actually be replace image. There, it is the right click. I just wasn't deep enough in. I will explain what I just did in just a second. So I can now triple click. Whoa, how many clicks do I have to do? There we go. Quadruple click. And I can scale it down and get a nice cropping in here. When I let go, it now is correct. All right, so I definitely need to clarify what I just did because even I was having a little trouble. When it's inside of a repeat grid, it does kind of want everything to function the same. So a single click definitely just kind of selects the whole thing. A double click gives me this, but it's all images. It's still functioning as a repeat grid. A triple allows me to finally replace the image, and then apparently a quadruple click allowed me to scale it and move it down so that I had a proper cropping the way that I wanted. Now it's a little bit to take in there. Another way you could do it, although I don't recommend it, is you could ungroup the grid, and then everything would function individually, and then you could repeat. You could put it back together. I don't usually design that way. You will find that with a lot of design, you will use this tool in unique ways. They're very dynamic, and there's no way for us all to use them the same. But and you can even use it for years and years and still get stuck for a second, like I did. So, all right. So we now have a replica of the Add Photos artboard in our original. Does anybody have any questions about that?
There's one question. Maybe you could illustrate it on one of the previous wireframes you created. So we have a question about the masking the image in the shape. Could you repeat that stage?
Absolutely. Let's just get off of an artboard. You can do stuff just in your pasteboard. So let's do that because I think it might make more sense. I'm going to import the photo of the palm tree. It's just there. So it just lives out here as big as we want it to be. And then I'm going to grab the triangle. I'm going to draw a nice equilateral triangle. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see better. And maybe I'll turn that over so we'll get more of the picture. That seems nice. So let me go to my layers. I've got a polygon, and and they're sitting above each other as they should be in this case. I just need to select both. So the triangle and the image, select them both. You go to Object, and you go Mask with Shape. There is a key command for it, but I don't even know it. I don't think it's really necessary. It looks like it would be Shift and Command and M, but just Mask with Shape. And now I've got a triangle shaped photo of a palm tree. So you always want to put the shape, whether it's just a normal rectangle, a circle, etc., above the photo, and then you go Object, Mask with Shape. Does that help?
That's great. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
We have a couple of questions about Figma and Sketch, but maybe we can keep them for the end, because let's focus on designing right now, and then we can ask these questions at the end.
Okay, sounds good. Let me zoom out. Pretty great they gave you that giant pasteboard, right? Because it can get messy pretty quickly. And eventually you would want to clean everything up. And like I said, I should have probably, very first time, I should have been naming this Avatar number 1. But they get into all the naming conventions and such in great depth in the intro. So just know I'm doing this a little bit faster than normal. Just keep it interesting more than anything. But you would want to name all your layers, because as you move along, it will just help you. All right, so we're almost done. We're just going to add color. So we'll select the most recent artboard, copy, paste, zoom on in. And I like this gray. I have no problem with this gray for text and for unselected icons. So over here, I had created a little color kit, and I can simply select this color, which I thought was really pretty. And I guess this gray is slightly different. So I could select all of what I've been doing at that random dark gray. It's harder once it's inside of a repeat grid, but I could make them the slightly different gray. And then I would just need to double click on these, and they would easily, I'm just clicking, that's all I'm doing, and it's changing it to the color. And one last time, double click, and it changes it. But let's say I don't like these colors. It's just because I chose them once doesn't mean they're the best colors. Maybe a blue or something. So when you click on anything other than images, because they're not filled with a color, if you click on a shape or text, it will give you an inspector that gives you color. And you click on the color itself, just on the rectangle, and you get this. I don't know what to call that. So I can play with the opacity by going up and down. And you'll see over here, the later gram is getting a lot more transparent. And then I can move all the way through all the different possible colors in the spectrum by doing this. And then I can also grab here and I can make it a more rich, bright version. I can make it almost white. I can make it black. So I don't know, if we go to this rich version, it's kind of nice. So in fact, let's get away from my colors for this one, and let's just do blue. And then let's say that I like this image. I want to show what it looks like when someone does like this image. So there's a couple ways I could do that. I can either grab my eyedropper and do it that way, or I could, while selecting this one, come back to my colors, just click this plus, and it's going to add a new color to my color kit, so that now whenever I click on anything, I can change it really quickly to be that blue. And there you have it. That would be a pretty quick tutorial on how to create an image scrolling app such as Instagram.
Nice. Thank you so much. Maybe we can return to the screen. If you just switch.
You mean so you're looking at me?
Button. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Hang on just a second.
So it's not just me.
Yeah. All right. That's me.
I still can't see it though.
Oh, you can't? Oh.
No, but I switched your camera off.
Oh, you did?
So if you...
Am I there?
There you go.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Greg. That was really great. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. As I said, this was the first webinar of its kind that we hosted in a while. You'll be receiving a survey in about 2 hours, so please fill it out so we can improve the event, the next iteration. I don't see too many questions, but there's always this question, Figma versus Sketch versus Adobe XD. So it will be very interesting to hear your thoughts, Greg.
Okay, sure. I don't know that there's a clear winner. Sketch came out first. They were groundbreaking at the time. We had to use Photoshop and Illustrator, and those are amazing programs, but they're way too robust for UI design. Not because UI design is a lesser, it's just it has very specific needs, and Photoshop and Illustrator just did too much. So it was incredible. It was a complete game changer. And they were kind of alone for a few years. And then Adobe got into the mix. And I think for a lot of people such as myself who are coming from a very traditional design background, even though I was using Sketch for a couple of years, within just a few short months, my brain just sort of fell back into that Adobe ecosystem. So I kind of find XD to be easier. I don't know if it's better. It's just, for me, it's easier. I do still think Sketch has the benefit of being around a little bit longer. I think it does do a few more things. And then Figma, I've only been using for about the last year, and I'm getting into it. I think it's pretty cool. I think that the collaborative aspects are probably its number one selling point. I don't know that the tools itself are any better or any worse, but the fact that kind of like a Google Doc, it's all real time. And for instance, all of us on this call could literally be working on our own artboards and we'd all see it. That there's something very cool about that for sure. I believe Sketch and XD are working on beta versions of real time. So I think, okay, so that's the first part of the answer. I don't think there is a true winner. I think you should learn at least two of them because really? you never know what the company or clients, if you stay freelance, what they will want you to use. And I think that just knowing two will be beneficial. But I also, like I said at the very, very start, they're so similar that you shouldn't have much trouble. So I always tell all my students, choose one. Let's say you do 4 of the 6 achievements in XD. Do 2 of them in Figma. Do 2 of them in Sketch. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that A, you didn't really have much of a learning curve, and B, you'll just be that much more marketable.
Great. And maybe, since maybe we have another couple of minutes, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into UI design. It's always interesting to hear that story.
Yeah, sure. Totally by accident. So I graduated from college in 2002 with a BFA in graphic design. I moved to London and got a job at a design studio that only did Flash design. I literally didn't know any Flash. So it was trial by fire. And then that didn't work out, and I ended up back in the States. And at the time, outside of Flash, I just felt like web design, which is UI design, web design at the time was pretty lame. You couldn't embed fonts. There was, the 4 default fonts like Arial, Helvetica Times, Geneva, I think. Anyway, and if somebody had a little tiny browser, half your work was just cropped off. There was no responsive design. Smartphones hadn't even been invented, and I wasn't that interested. So I went in a very traditional like print, product, etc. Animation. I learned animation. And then I think it was around 2010, 2011, the Boston Globe was the first responsive website. And I really remember being interested in that. I was like, wait, what? It looks optimized on all screens. And then I think it was very shortly before or after that we could start embedding fonts. So being a designer, brand is really important to me. So part of the reason it's not just I'm like a prima donna and I'm upset that there's 4 fonts. It's that I'm working on a product that has this beautiful branding, and the font is a big part of that. And now I have to use some random font that doesn't match for their web presence. So as soon as you can start putting those two things together, I got much more interested. I was working at an ad agency in Chicago at the time, and I was on the same floor as the UI designers. I was just doing more of the animation and design. And I just started raising my hand, and they started giving me work. So no formal training in UI, I guess, just all on the job and all trial by fire, which is stressful. But I think my first job was first UI project with that team was a Coke microsite for the Super Bowl, and I was like, oh, all right.
Probably lots of people saw it, actually. No.
Yeah, I think so for sure. It was like a little gamified thing for the Super Bowl. So anyway, that's kind of how I got into it. I love it. I split my time still between traditional kind of product design and animation and UI, which for me keeps it interesting. But that's how I got into it.
And we have a question from Thea. What part of UI do you love the most, or your job as a UI designer?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Mentoring, of course. Mentoring.
Of course, that's exactly what it is. My favorite part actually is the responsive side. So I don't do mobile app design. There's not actually any reason why. No one's ever asked me to. Almost all of my UI design is websites. And I love that I have to take and make a design that looks really awesome in that shape, and then in that shape, and then in that shape. And then it's like I have to design 3, 4, 5, to bring it back to like a print design term. Like I have to design 4 posters, and they all have to look awesome. Mm-hmm. And they all have to function in different ways. I actually really like that, say, if you're doing a website for a restaurant, that, well, the desktop version maybe has beautiful photos of the food or the dining room and like a bit of their history, and it's got all this space. But if I'm looking at that exact same restaurant's website on the train, I'm heading there, I don't care. I don't want any of that. So I also like that we have to kind of distribute information in UI design for different uses, and that almost for sure I need a map and a phone number to be more prominent on that iteration. So I really like the kind of the way that it changes depending on the device, depending on the user's needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how do you keep up with all the UI design trends, and how do you upskill? How do you keep up with the constantly evolving industry?
I don't. It's not possible. It's just not. It's overwhelming and daunting. But I don't know. Pinterest, Tumblr, Behance, Dribbble. I get all my inspiration. Instagram. I get my inspiration from the usual places. I save things that I find exciting. I really like that Pinterest has a lot of tutorials, and you can kind of watch how other people do things. Because as I said 20 minutes ago or so, these programs are dynamic, and you can solve this problem in a lot of different ways. It's always interesting to see how someone else gets to the same result. And then I do take some continuing courses every single year. It doesn't have to be like a CareerFoundry size thing, but I'll definitely dabble in a 3-4 class something or other online, probably at least once a year, just to make sure that I'm staying up to date.
And you mentioned product design. Could you explain the term product design, what it actually means? Is it UX design? Is it UI design? What it actually means?
I used it in the incorrect way. I used it in the old man way. When I said product design, I literally meant like I work for a record label, and so I designed their products. It's getting really confusing. So product design, yeah, what is that in the UI sense? It's more, at least the way I understand it, it's more of almost a managerial step above UI and UX. It's the product, whether that's a website or a mobile app or an enterprise something or other. That kind of doesn't matter. The product is more the software. It's not necessarily a physical thing like I was meaning. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to be confusing about that. That happens pretty often.
It was also extremely confusing for me. But I think, it can be anything so small as a timeline on a dashboard. That could be a product for that product. It could be a bigger thing like an app that's also a product. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
Some of our terminology is a little anemic and lacking, but we do our best, right?
I think that's it. I don't see any more questions. So Craig, thank you again for presenting. I hope it wasn't too stressful with all the
my pleasure.
Technical issues.
I didn't love that part, but that really does happen more often
always.
than I'd like to admit. It's fine. You got to solve it.
Yeah. So thank you again for staying with us and for your patience. Again, we're going to send a survey, so please fill it out. And if you have any questions about our programs, please reach out to one of our program advisors. They'll be very, very happy to answer all of them. So with that, I wish you a good evening, good morning, wherever you're based. See you next time.
Thank you, everyone.